Much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to the nominees for being here. Mr. Hyden, if I could just start with you. You just said that you have experience administering an agency ethics program. You're at the State Department right now, is that right?
Yes, that's right, Senator.
And among other things, you've been the legal advisor for ethics and financial disclosures.
Yes, I'm the Assistant Legal Advisor for Ethics and Financial Disclosure, which is the ethics office for the State Department.
Right, okay, very good. Are you familiar, you've been tracking what's going on with the Energy Department when it comes to ethics, financial disclosures, and stock trading? Are you familiar? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, Senator. I obviously haven't been involved and don't have a depth of knowledge.
Well, let me give you just a little flavor of it. So last year, the Wall Street Journal reported that hundreds of Energy Department officials hold stocks related to the agency's work despite repeated warnings that there were conflicts of interest here. How does that strike you? Good practice?
Well, Senator, I guess a couple of observations. Obviously, I can't speak to the specific facts of any employee at the Department of Energy or guidance that the Energy Ethics Program has provided. But this relates to the question Chair Peters asked. I would say it's important for OGE to be in a position to evaluate the work of any agency ethics program and to make clear that we hold them to a high standard and want them to hold their employees to a high standard and follow through, right? It's not just explaining the rules, it's communicating them and doing what you can to build a culture of ethics. Well, ultimately, it's each employee's responsibility to abide by the ethics laws. But we have high expectations for our ethics program as well.
You have high expectations, and the public, frankly, has high expectations for public officials. And I just have to tell you, I mean, this is a government-wide problem. It's a problem in this Congress. You've got elected officials, members of this Congress, who are trading stock and making profits. Like, the public looks at this and they say, oh my gosh, how do these people manage to do it? I mean, it is unbelievable. They get elected to Congress, and they become the most savvy stock market traders in the world. It's amazing. There are whole websites devoted to tracking members of Congress's stock trades. It's incredible. I mean, it's absolutely incredible, which is why I again call on this Congress, as I have for years now, to take action to ban stock trading and stock holding by members of Congress. But it's not just in Congress, it's in the executive branch. And I can just tell you, when you have hundreds of members of the Energy Department and other executive branch agencies who hold stocks in companies that they supposedly regulate, that is incredibly destructive of public trust. Yesterday, I talked to the Secretary of the Department of Energy. She has held stock. She personally has violated the Stock Act 9 separate times. That was before she misled the United States Senate by saying she no longer held any individual stocks. She told us she had sold all of them. Turns out that was false. She had not sold them. It turns out she still held individual stocks, including stocks her department regulates, in companies her department regulates. I mean, this is outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous, and it's endemic. It's endemic. So my message to you is, I hope that if you are confirmed, that you will be absolutely a bulldog about going after this and telling executive branch officials, listen, you can't own stocks in companies that you regulate. We can't allow hundreds of government officials to continue to willfully violate the law and we ought to update the law, by the way. I mean, there's a simple solution to this. We ought to just ban executive officials at a leadership level from owning individual stocks. I mean, that would do it. But we at least should be complying with the laws on the books. And I just think it is outrageous that executive branch officials, and I'm sure this goes on, by the way, in all administrations, but it is outrageous that these people are trading stock in companies that they regulate. I mean, it raises the question, who is running the department? Is it the corporations whose stock that these officers are so attentive to? So my point in this, Mr. Hyden, is I hope that you will be very firm in this, and I hope that if you are confirmed, you will work to make sure that executive branch officials, number one, understand the law, but number two, comply with the law and don't willfully violate it over and over and over. And all I can say is, when you have the head of a department, the head of an agency, the head of the Energy Department violating the Stock Act 9 separate times and continuing to, frankly, lie about it to Congress, that is a big problem, a big problem. In my few remaining moments here, Let me shift gears. Ms. Wagner, let me ask you from a federal labor relations point of view, when it comes to labor contracting within the federal government, this committee recently passed, I'm delighted to say unanimously, passed my legislation along with Senator Booker that would make it harder for the federal government, make it impossible for the federal government to contract with companies that have child labor in their supply chain. I mean, does that sound like a good thing to ban to you? I mean, to stop the use of child labor in federal contracting?
Yes, Senator, it does.
I'm glad to hear that. You know, this is a very serious issue. Since 2018, the Labor Department has seen a 70% increase in children being illegally employed by companies. The New York Times has published reports about well-known brands such as Tyson Foods, who have done business in many states, including mine, that have illegal child labor running rampant in their facilities. And a lot of these companies get contracts, as it relates to you, contracts with the federal government. And so they're getting these, they're bidding on getting federal contracts, they're getting federal money, and yet they've got child labor in their supply chain. So I'm glad to hear you say that you are opposed to this. I hope this legislation will soon become law, and I hope that you'll support efforts to root out any kind of child labor in federal contracting, in federal government employment practices with these independent contractors. I mean, do I have your commitment that you would do that?
Senator Hawley, I share your outrage at that practice. I would have to note that the FLRA is regulates in the sphere of labor unions that represent federal employees, not contractor employees. So I'm not sure the scope of the FLRA's authority to intercede in that practice to address it. I suspect that's a Department of Labor.
But you support the effort. You support this legislation. You support the effort to root out child labor from federal contracting,
Yes.
federal government. Fantastic.